Okay, so today we are joined by a former D1 goaltender from Michigan Tech, a Winnipeg Jets draft pick who had a career in the AHL and ECHL, and he now runs Phillips Sports Performance. Jamie Phillips, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Preston. I appreciate it.
No problem. So I kind of wanted to jump straight to your, I guess, career in the BCHL, which, in my opinion, I think the BC is probably like the top two or three like non-major junior leagues there is, right? Because I think it goes like USHL and then probably either the NA or the BC where you see guys coming out of. Did you have any opportunity to try and play in the USHL or the NA, or did you want to stay in Canada?
Yeah, so I put the USHL above, so that's number one, and then the BCHL is two, and then I think I put the the NOL as the third. I had nothing really serious when I was younger. I got invited to a few camps, but they were more. I think they were just those like mass emails that everyone would get, and then I reached out to I don't know who it was, Sioux City or Sioux Falls, and I just was like, look, I'm serious about coming here, and they kind of just blew me off, and that was it. So I had an opportunity. I was actually traded out to the BCHL from the CCHL, the Ottawa Junior League. So that's kind of how I ended up out there. But I mean, with import rules and stuff, it does make it more difficult for Canadians to play in the junior leagues, and especially as there's a big European push or invasion, however you want to call it. There's a lot more Europeans coming over to play, which I think is an incredible thing. So it really makes it tough, and it's hard to take like I don't want to say a free agent, but more of like a chance on someone, especially a goalie in the USHL. So I never got that opportunity, but like I tell a lot of my goalies, if you're good enough and you play well, you're gonna get scouted no matter the league. And again, the BCHL is 1A, 1B with the USHL or 1-2, so still a really good league.
Yeah, I didn't know too much about the BC until I guess later in my career and found out that um I guess whenever I talked to college coaches or talk to D1 coaches, not that they were recruiting me, but just because I knew a few, and I would ask them where they're pulling most of their guys from, and it was always like USHL, BC, and then guys out of the NA were kind of like those last couple filler spots that they were looking for. Might not necessarily get a full ride, but like those were they were kind of picking some players off. So you finished your junior career in the OJ. Did you want to play major junior at any point? Were you looking at playing in the CHL at all?
So I was drafted in the fourth round of the Sarnia Sting back in 2009, and I did. So like growing up in Ontario, you're just told the OHL, the OHL, the OHL, like that's what you have to do. You get a little bit of college hockey, but it's mostly like Michigan State, maybe Ohio State. Especially that was like pre so big social media, like Facebook and MySpace were kind of the thing that around that time.
Right.
So it wasn't like it is today. There's no like everything college hockey or anything like that to get attention and spotlight in college. Um, so I told myself that I was going to play major junior if I was able to get, play for 5 years. So meaning make it as a 16-year-old and get the full education package. I didn't make it as a 16-year-old. Honestly, looking back, I don't think I was ready to make it. So it's probably a good thing. So I didn't make it. And so as soon as I got cut from the main camp, I just told myself, all right, it's time to go to college. And went and played Jungle B for a little bit. Didn't play, actually, I shouldn't say play. I just backed up a lot in junior B. Didn't get a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
Um, but I got an opportunity in Pembroke in the Ottawa League, so make the jump from junior A into junior A without a lot of like experience, fortunately. So that's just a lucky break on my side. And I called Sarnia and told them I wasn't coming. I'm going to college. The GM at the time, I can't remember who it was, the head coach at the time was not thrilled. Um, Not that I think they had any plans for me in any way, but I think they just, no one likes to be told that they're playing second fiddle to anybody. And so yeah, that was really it. Then when I was playing in Pembroke, I had a few opportunities to sign with OHL teams, but at that point, I just decided that college was the way for me to go, and I'm very happy that I decided to go that way because even though like in the moment, I thought like, okay, I was a high draft pick and I'm super good when I'm 16, 17. I was not ready. I was not ready to play
No.
and like to go from like 16 to 18 to get drafted in the NHL. No, I wasn't ready. I needed the years to develop in college. And that's the big advantage that you get is you get 4 or 5 years of junior plus 4 years of college. That's 8 to 9 years of development that you have over other athletes. And I wasn't a Connor McDavid or anything, so I'm not going to get an exceptional status or be a superstar right off the gate. So for me, I needed that extra time.
Yeah, that's something Jason Mazzetti, he's the development coach for the Hurricanes. When I was talking to him, is that so many of these young guys come out and they're just thrust into the spotlight now. And I don't know, I guess that time to develop kind of isn't there as much as it used to be. So how did you decide that you wanted to go and play well, I guess you kind of just talked about how you wanted to play college hockey. How did you end up deciding on Michigan Tech? Did you talk to other schools? Did you have a visit?
Yeah, so actually Michigan Tech was the only school I had an official visit with. When I went out, so I had spoken to no, I hadn't spoken to any schools my first year, junior A, and I put up pretty decent numbers. We won the RBC Cup. Um, so had a good year, but I just didn't get any exposure. Actually, I spoke to an NHL team before I ever spoke to a college team. And when I went out to BC, like right off the bat, first exhibition game, yes, okay, assistant coach at the time, Billy McCall, he's now with Michigan, and he came up and he's just like, "Hey, this is who I am." It was Michigan Tech. He gave me the card, and I had never heard of Michigan Tech, and I asked him if that was Division three, and probably not what I should have said, but for some reason they kept tabs on me, and as I had I played really well in the BC, and with when you're playing a better league, you just get more exposure, and so when it was all said and done, I had spoken to over a dozen teams. I had a bunch of offers, couple full rides, couple partials. And I went to Michigan Tech and on a visit, and Steve Shields was the goalie coach at the time, former NHL goalie Steve Shields. And they had just had Mel Pearson as the new head coach. He was only a year old into his tenure. And the program was on a really nice rebuild. And I just got this sense of this is where I want to be. I don't know what it was. It was just that gut feeling. I think they also had the program I wanted to study, and I'm a big believer in education. And I think that you shouldn't settle for a degree that you don't really want or are passionate about just to go to a different school. And so everything kind of fell full circle. And then going on that gut decision, I was just like, yeah, this is it. Like I'm gonna go to Tech, and I'm glad I did ultimately because things panned out in a way, and I'm still here coaching. So it was a good school, and it's a really great program.
Yeah, to touch on that, you were NCAA all academic team, studied chemistry, biology, biochemistry, strength and conditioning, and nutrition, and then you got a master's of kinesiology. And yeah, were you always into school? Did you kind of know what you wanted to do after hockey based off all that, or is that just what you're interested in at the time?
Yes and no. So, my parents definitely emphasize the importance of education. My mom is a medical doctor. She used to be a dentist. She has two doctorate degrees. My dad is a teacher. So, education was priority number one. And they instilled in me the ethic that academics and athletics can work in harmony, and academics will allow me to go farther in athletics and vice versa. And it is true. So, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So my first year, I decided to take kinesiology just because I like strength training. And so I took kinesiology, and I didn't do super hot my first year just because I thought like I was just freshly drafted in the NHL. I thought, okay, like I'm gonna be here for a year or two. I'm signing and going to go make millions of dollars, and there you go. And so my grades definitely suffered a bit. And then I was actually my goalie partner, Phoenix Copley, was getting all of the starts. So after that, for like 2 years, and I only had like 13, 14 starts between the first 2 years, I realized, okay, like maybe I'm not going to go play hockey after this. So I decided that I'm going to go to med school, become a physician. And then Phoenix signed, and the door was all mine. And I ended up playing every single game except for one after that. Grades, I already, I like I put, and because that prior year, I understood like how hard what's the minimal effective dose for me to get an A in all my classes. So I had that work ethic. So I put that on top of feeling good and playing well on the ice. It kind of is snowballed into like a good effect. And then once I got into pro, I still was planning on becoming a physician afterwards. And towards the end, I realized that it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I decided to go into the physical therapy route, which is where I am now. And I'm glad I did, because that allows me to both be in the medical profession, which is what I want, and
Right.
also allows me to be in a position where I can coach goalies still. And ultimately, that's for me, that's the best of both worlds, is I can do exactly what I want to do in life, and I don't have to, because if I was just a physician, there's no way I would have the time to coach goalies. And I don't know if I would have started being a goalie coach right out of retirement if I had not gone to PT school, learned about a little bit more about myself and what I liked and what I didn't like about life, and was able to be like, okay, I definitely miss hockey and I want to get into it. And so I'm glad that everything kind of worked out as I did. But it was a long-winded question. But yeah, essentially, education was always a priority for me growing up.
Right. I feel like for the majority of people that play hockey, that's kind of a decision they have to make at some point. Like even at towards the end of my career, I was like, okay, I could try and go play hockey at a small D3 school up north, see if that works out. And I was like, even like my last like year and a half of juniors, I was like, I know I'm not going to play after this. Chose to pursue education instead. And I have buddies who did that, who like played juniors. Now they're playing over in like Finland and Spain and like lower levels of pro hockey. And honestly, I admire them for chasing the dream and doing what they love. I couldn't do it though. So, but
There's two schools of thought with that, and I can appreciate both. And my school of thought and the way I was brought up is that you always can have your education to fall back on, and sports is not forever. And I think that's a very good and reasonable thing to say. And on the other side is having that fallback plan, or that plan B, allows you to, I don't want to say be lackadaisical, but it's like the saying, you burn the boats, where if someone doesn't have that education that to fall back on, and their only plan B is to go home and work on the farm, or go home and sell used cars, or do whatever,
hmm,
then sometimes that can be extra motivation to push through some of the adversity that you have along your pro career. And I don't know what the best way is. I like the way that, my life has turned out so far. Although when times were tough, there were a lot of times where I'd question, like, why am I doing this? I could just go back to school. I can go get a job. Like I don't have to play hockey. So it's interesting. And I don't know exactly what it's like from the other side, because I just don't have no experience with that. But there's an argument to be said for both. And I think that's a really interesting kind of way to approach it.
yeah, right. It's the whole, well, if you have a plan B, then you're planning to fail thing. So
Yeah.
my buddies who are doing it, they have so much fun. Like have lived in Spain and Finland, and again, it's not like they're gonna go super far in pro hockey, but they're living the dream and doing what they love. So honestly, anybody who does what they love and doesn't chase the money and just like never like works a day in their life, I
Mhm.
admire them for it because I don't have that. I guess one passion in my life to where I could have went off and did something that I could dedicate myself to 100%. So I always appreciate people who are able to do that. Um, so I guess to backtrack a little bit, what was the biggest difference from a goaltender's perspective, jumping from college or from junior hockey to college hockey?
The importance of practice. In junior, you're playing 60 plus games a season. College, you're playing maybe 30, 35, maxing out at 40. Um, so your opportunity to get better and to build confidence with the coaching staff comes from practice. And I'm not saying I had bad practice habits, but I definitely didn't understand the importance of that when I got there. And so I didn't impress right away off the bat, and that set me back behind Phoenix, who was able to get opportunities because he just looked better than me in practice. And I'll tell that to all the goalies, is that this is practice is your tryout. It's your dry run, your um whatever they call that in theater, when you're wearing your whatever, when you practice
Hmm.
before the actual play. And that's
Your
what it's
dress
like for
rehearsal. That
dress rehearsal. Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
And that's the biggest surprise for a lot of players when they get here, because they think it's going to be exactly like junior. It's not. It's you have to perform both in practice and you have to perform in the game. There's no days off, like at all. At all. In junior, do you have to go down in every single shot? Nah, probably not.
Yeah.
College, you're standing up and getting beat like because it looks lazy. It's a bad look.
See, I didn't know that about one of my friends toured up in the NA and had like some smaller D1 offers and ended up playing. I forget where he played. Maybe not UMass Boston, but played one of the top like five D3 schools. And asked him why I didn't play D1. And he told me that they can pull the scholarship. He's like, they give me like a half ride, and if I don't perform, they can pull my scholarship. And I didn't. I don't know if I just didn't really think of it at the time, but I didn't know that you kind of have that pressure similar to pro and college, where if you don't perform, then you know they might pull your scholarship and you're going to lose your spot.
Yeah,
So
it. I've heard of it happening before, and it does happen. So usually in college, like, oh, you get the full ride, you're done. No, scholarships are year to year. Um, I know when the current head coach of Lake State took over, he just told everyone he's pulling all their scholarships because he wanted to recruit his own guys. So yes, you can do that. If you don't perform, can you lose your scholarship? Yes. In college, it is less likely, and I say that with like big disclaimer, but it is less likely that it happens. And I see in my end, usually guys get more promotions. They go from maybe a 20% to like a 40% from good play. But yes, it is very possible. And it does happen to a lot of guys that just don't perform for usually it's a year or 2 years. And then it's like, okay, well, you're not panning out the way we wanted you to. We're going to have to move some money around to bring in to be able to delegate this set amount of scholarships that we have in order to get a couple of guys that might are going to make us a better team. Although I think the rules might be changing or there's talks of changing where everyone can get a full ride, which I very much agree with. I just don't know when that's coming in. And I think that that would help a lot. Just with everything like the portal and all these new rules and stuff, it makes everything really interesting. And I hope, I mean, I was always a big believer that everyone deserves a scholarship. I mean, we all work our absolute bags off every single day. We all go to class. Why is one guy paying 80% of his money and another guy isn't when we all are putting in the same amount of work? Well, I mean, yes, skill and it is a business to a sense, but I mean, it's not like
right.
universities can't do it. They can. It's just the rules are set
Yeah.
up in order to be fair across divisions or whatever the reasoning is. It's outside my pay grade, but I really hope that that comes in just so that the cost of school is very expensive for people. I mean, my doctorate degree costs like $110,000. It's a lot of money that I
Yeah.
pay out of my pocket, to go to school, and that's why I work and all these things so I can pay for it. You're telling me that you can't just like complicate the rest of school? I don't know. We'll see. And I know hopefully the rule changes, but right now, yeah, it is pretty tough. And if you only have like 12 scholarships to divide between 30 guys, there's
Mhm.
some guys get fulls and some guys are just getting partials and some guys are getting walk-ons.
Yeah, that might change with the portal because I guess if guys don't have a full ride and they have the option to just jump ship and go to another school and get an offer, that I mean, for a lot of guys that I guess aren't really trying to go the pro route or don't know how that's going to work out, they're going to take that free education.
Yeah, and the portal makes it interesting in terms of you can just if you're not happy for a year, you can just leave.
Yeah.
Where when I was playing, you couldn't do that. Now, again,
Mhm.
is it good or bad? I definitely think it's better for the player side with the portal, way
Yeah.
worse for the organization because you just risk losing good guys. Or if you're a small school and someone pops off, a big school can just grab him. He can be like, I'm too big for Mercyhurst University. I want to go play in, Penn State. I'm gonna enter the portal and I'm gonna go. So that helps Penn State, hurts Mercyhurst, but ultimately it helps the player. And so like I toe the line between coach and former player on that,
Mhm.
but ultimately it is what it is. But I'm a big like loyalty guy. And if you're gonna put in the work and you make a commitment to the school, I'm a big believer in that honoring it, unless there's some sort of circumstance where you're not comfortable or you just absolutely hate it, then you gotta do what's right for you and you gotta be happy.
I guess on that same note, do you think that kind of heard the argument that I guess in situations where guys would have to struggle for adversity to get their spot or to get like have to kind of sit there and grind it out to get their chance, that is kind of getting, I guess, not taken away, but there's definitely an easier route for players to where let's say they don't I don't know, they get in bad with the coach, they don't perform right away instead of kind of having to put the work in to claw their way back up to like say top two lines, they can just jump ship and go to somewhere else. So
Yeah, no, I see it both ways, and we
mm,
deal with it, and I've heard a million different things, and that's just, yeah, there is a little bit of that gets lost, where being able to deal with the adversity. But then again, it's like, if you get in bad with the coach, would you ever get an opportunity regardless of how you helped it? And it's just, there's so many unknowns, and always the grass is always greener, no matter what. The grass is always going to be greener until you get there, and then you realize it's not. But from when you're looking over the fence, it really is. And then like it hurts a lot of programs too. So like Lake State doesn't have any graduate programs. So as soon as players, graduate early, or especially with the COVID rule, when guys had 5 years, all their best players left because they didn't have a graduate program to support them. And so that really, like the COVID rules, which are coming pretty close to an ending. I think there's only one or two classes of COVID guys left before it goes back to 4 years. But yeah, it's a really interesting time in college hockey, that with the NLIs, all these things, and I think, or college athletics, and I think it's good, and I think it's bad at the same time.
yeah. So I guess to backtrack again, you were drafted 190th overall in the seventh round of 2012 draft. Got picked up by Winnipeg. Did you know you were going to get drafted? Were you talking to teams? I guess what was that kind of overall experience like?
Not, it wasn't the traditional sense. So I was placed on the draft list very late because I was traded the OJ. We were a weaker team. I was playing very well, and we were
Mm,
winning games, and I was making like 60, 70 shots a night, which was like, I don't know what was going on. I was just playing out of my mind.
no.
It was just one of those things. And someone at the rink, one of the heads of goalie scouting, just happened to be at a game, happened to like me, threw my name on the list. Didn't talk to any teams. Winnipeg called me on a whim and just said, "Hey, if we're there, we're gonna draft you. We're just gonna use you as a throwaway pick or whatever. You come in the draft." And I was like, "I'm not coming in the draft." Blah 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 blah. So they did. And I've talked about this before. And being drafted for me was probably the worst thing that could happen to me in my career, because you don't know it at the time. But when you go to college, drafted out of junior, your NHL team holds your rights for 4 years. Your entire college career, they have your rights. So if they
Mm,
don't need you or want you at any point, they don't have to sign you. Plus, once you graduate, they have your rights till August. And so if you look at like Jimmy VC, he was the guy that, he'd say like, I'm not going to sign with Nashville, just like trade me,
mm,
and he could demand that because he was a bigger, better superstar. For me, you know, my last 2 years of college, I was in the top five goalies in the country for 2 consecutive years. If I was a free agent, I would have signed probably after my junior year to a team that really, really wanted me. Where Winnipeg had my rights, they didn't need me and they didn't want me. And so when graduation came around, I wanted to go sign, and they said straight up that they weren't going to sign me. And then that put me in a hard spot because now I had to wait until August to become a free agent. And then they did, and so I couldn't sign with anyone else. And then since I was drafted and I was playing well, all the other teams thought that I was just going to sign with Winnipeg, so no one had me in plans. So no one was going to
mm.
hedge, and so everyone signed up all the other goalies because they weren't drafted and they're free agents. So I do not, if you're going to the college way, I do not think you should be drafted. And I'm very open about that. And that's just one of the advantages that NHL teams can have. If you go to college, it sucks. It is what it is. I ended up signing with the Jets because they needed me, not because they wanted me. And that ultimately hurt some of the development process. But yeah, so like getting drafted on the surface is very cool. But when you look back and you realize, and I'm not the only one that this happens to. This happens to like a lot of guys. Even one of the guys I played with throughout my college career, Cliff Watson, same thing, drafted to San Jose. San Jose probably should have signed with other teams during his career. San Jose is like, nah, 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 dragging along. And then, fortunately he's still playing. He's on American League deals, but I think he definitely could have gotten entry level if he wasn't drafted. And that's happens to more guys than you think of.
Right. Did you know Gerald Mayhew? He played for Ferris State when you were there.
Just played against them. I didn't know him personally, and I played against him when he was in Grand Rapids, right? No, went to Iowa. He was in
Yeah.
Iowa. He went to
Yeah. Yeah.
Iowa. So I played against him when he was in Iowa, and then is he? I don't know where he is now. Last I heard of him, he was in Philly.
He's with that's actually my cousin. He's with the Checkers now in the
Okay.
AHL.
Yeah, because I remember he played a bunch of games for Philly, and I think, and but yeah, I remember playing against him. He's a very, very good player, and that was when Ferris had like a really good team,
Yeah.
and yeah, they gave us some good games, but it's that's why it's good. Honestly, if you go to college, be a free agent. Just
Yeah, he
you
was
don't want to get
undrafted.
drafted.
So
Yeah,
I
a
guess I
huge
don't know if that
advantage.
gave him more options.
It does because say he was
Yeah.
drafted to Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay didn't want him.
Hmm.
He has to wait till August while all the other teams start signing guys in July 1st.
Yeah.
That kills your opportunities unless a team was willing to wait for you. It
Hmm.
just kills you. And I wish that rule would change. I wish that rule would be like graduation day. You play your last college game. The team that drafts you has like a week to sign you. Until then, you become a free agent or something like that. That just makes it or makes it July 1st, like everyone else. But
Yeah.
again, it is what it is.
So you finished your college career and you went to Manitoba Moose in the AHL. What was that like playing your kind of first bit of professional hockey?
It was fun. So I started off at the East Coast League. I got sent down to Tulsa, and I went 10-0 to start. Played really well. We had a good team, and I was playing very, very well. Ended up being like East Coast All Star, all these things.
Yeah.
And then in the second half of the year, I spent the rest of my time in Manitoba, and I played a bit, played okay, like just played average, about par for the course with my goalie partner. Nothing too crazy, but it was nice to get a good start. Like I was on the upward trajectory, which is exactly what I wanted. The problem, and that I occurred later, was that regardless of my trajectory, there wasn't many opportunities there. And so it kind of didn't matter how well I played. And
Mm.
so that sucks. And you don't know that until like you retire and you're like, okay, like that makes sense now. But in the moment, I was playing well. It was nice to be in the American League. It was nice to be off the bus in the East Coast League, finally taking planes to games and not, you know, sitting 22 hours on the bus ride. But it's yeah, it was a grind, but it was nice. It was nice to get my feet wet, make some money, live the pro life for the first time and not have to study all day every day.
Yeah. So what would you say was the biggest difference in that jump from I guess college to the East Coast and then from the coast to the AHL from a goaltender's perspective?
College to the East Coast isn't much of a jump. Although it goes from a very, very defensive game in college where everyone's blocking shots all the time to the East Coast where it is a bit still the Wild West and you give up a lot more opportunities, like a lot more grade A's, I felt. The jump from the East Coast to the American League is very big. Although I didn't get any NHL games, I've skated with a lot of NHL guys and NHL camps and practices. I would say the jump from the coast to the A is more difficult than the A to the NHL. And I've heard that from many people because it's the skill level between the coast and the A is very big. From the A to the show is pretty small. Like most of the guys in the American League could probably play in the NHL. In the coast, it's like guys are not as consistent with passes, with breakouts. You're giving up a lot of turnovers, opportunities and guys aren't getting paid enough to screen very like a ton in front of the net. Like guys, if you're getting 400, $500 a week, you're not going to stand in front of the net and get absolutely abused. When you get to the AHL, guys are at least making 50,000. So they're more
Yeah.
willing and they're hungry, and the NHL is just over there. So guys are way better at screening, taking the eyes away. Passes are much more crisp, everything's precise, and the play happens the way it should happen, and it's less sporadic than in the East Coast League.
From talking to Gerald when we asked him about it, he said that from the AHL to NHL, he said that the NHL is faster, but the hockey sense at that level, like everyone's where they need to be at all the time, like all the time. So you kind of said like it is faster and the skill level is higher, but it's almost easier because the game's more automatic because everyone knows exactly where they need to be. Like no
And
one's making
yeah,
small
that's exactly
mistakes.
it. And you don't know exactly for the most part. If you are a goalie and you're at that AHL NHL ability, that's like able to read the play. When everyone is where they're supposed to be at all times, you so your brain and your expertise as a goalie is you're going to be able to read the play. Where in the East Coast League, it's a bit of a cluster. You have three lines, guys are tired. it's different, and not, and things kind of happen in ways you don't expect them to happen. So that's what makes it so challenging to play in the East Coast League versus the American League.
Yeah, I don't know. I always did you enjoy it throughout your entire pro career? Because like I never played college hockey, I never played pro hockey. So like I guess the thought of it, like I look at guys in the AHL, and it's like that would be such a like it's not a right. It's a privilege to play in those leagues.
Mhm.
Did you feel that way the entire time during your pro career, or at any point did it kind of get, I guess, not monotonous, but I don't know, it's where you weren't enjoying it as much?
Yeah, so I enjoyed a lot of it, and I also hated a lot of it. And ultimately, that's kind of why I retired, is because I got frustrated with myself, with the way I was progressing and developing, with the opportunities that were and were not coming my way. And it wore down on me mentally. And it did come to the point where my last 2 seasons, I kind of was dragging it out when I should have retired right away. I just didn't know what I was doing in life. I wanted to make a little bit more money. I still had a little bit of the fire in terms of, okay, I can still like I play well. Like I just need a chance. I just need a chance. And the chances never came, or maybe I never earned the chance. And eventually it turned into a job, and it turned into a job I hated. And that's
No.
why I had to get out of there. And my last year when I got released from my team in England and I went to the coast, I was doing okay in Cincinnati, but I called the head coach now, Joe Shawn at Michigan Tech, and I said, hey, like I'm gonna retire. If I come be the goalie coach, can I get my master's? And if that happens, then I'm going to retire. If it doesn't, maybe I'll play one more year and then sort it out from there. But yeah, it's there's so many good things. You meet so many cool people and experiences and opportunities. And then there's also so many like bad things where like if you're in the NHL, you're making millions or hundreds of thousands. To be honest, a lot of times I would say for the majority of players, that money covers up any frustrations you have. When you're not making that much money, when the opportunities are far and few between, and the dream of the playing in the NHL gets further and further away, it can be very frustrating and daunting. And if you are just happy playing hockey, then it's okay. But if you either wanted more for your career or more for yourself in life, then that's where a lot of guys, and myself included, say, like, we're done. I got to do something else. And most guys usually don't go back to school like I did, but it was just something to do. And I'm glad I did, but I could have just went back and got a job or did whatever because, you know, sometimes you want to grow up and you have a family and kids, and you don't want them to be driving city to city because you've been traded 9 times in one year in the East Coast League for $500 a week. Like some people do.
Yeah.
I just didn't.
Yeah, and that kind of, yeah, that's like at a lower level where I was with my career. I was like, it's not, at some point it, and it depends on who you are as a person, but at some point it's not worth it, at least in my eyes. And I guess that's another thing is people think that like for me it's like, oh, playing pro hockey must be the dream, like AHL, NHL, even the coast. And like after talking to people about it who's played at that level, they're like, it's still a job. Like I have a cousin who plays pro baseball, and I talked to him about it. He was like, and I asked him, I said, "Is this what you thought it would be when you were a little kid dreaming of playing like in the MLB?" And he was like, "Yes and no. Like, don't get me wrong, it's awesome and I love it, but it's still a job. I still have to be like, I got to be at the field at like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. I'm not leaving till 8 o'clock at night every day, no matter what. If I'm injured and I just have to go do like PT, like I still have to be there at that same time. I still don't leave at that time. Like I'm
Mhm.
only home, like I'm on the road 6 months a year. So I feel like that's something that people don't really think about, especially I guess if you don't, I guess, know anybody who does. It's like, oh, they're pro athletes, they're living the dream, they're making all this money, yada yada yada. But it's still a job at the end of the day, and the stress of like if you don't perform, you're done. So I
Yeah,
feel like that kind of gets looked over for most people who are just fans of sports in general.
a ton. And like, especially if you're on the East Coast, if you play in the East Coast League, contracts are 24 hours. They're not, it's not like you sign a 5 year, $5 million deal or 5 year, $25,000 deal. You can, if you're on an East Coast contract and someone gets sent down from the American League, you're done. you're done. This is why it's so hard to be a free agent goalie or to be a goalie not on an AHL or NHL deal in the East Coast. That's why so many guys just go to Europe because at least some of those contracts are guaranteed, and it's very difficult. And so yes, it's an incredible privilege to be able to play pro sports and get paid for that. I'm never going to deny that. But also on the flip side of it is almost all athletes work their entire lives with one single goal in mind. They have the horse blinders on. All they want to do is to get to one thing. And when things don't go that well or whatever, it's okay that you're not happy with it. And I think you'll hear like, especially like now and now with like mental health being more open, you'll hear usually only hear like NHL guys. They'll talk about mental health struggles and like the stress and the pressure and all these things. And I can assure you that happens a ton in the like the lower levels. Just no one on TSN or ESPN really cares about what goes on in the East Coast League. But it's okay for it to be a job, just like someone who works just an office setting. You know,
Yeah.
did that person really have was their dream to work in an office? Probably not. But when they got to college and they wanted to be an accountant, they tried really hard and worked hard and became an accountant. And when they got there, maybe working at a big accounting firm isn't what they wanted to do, but they have a family and they have to put food on the table. And to have a complete change of your career is a massive thing. And that's just an acceptance as a hockey player or an athlete that at some point you're probably going to have to get another career unless you're, you know, superstar NHL creme de la creme. And I think people overlook that because most people just see athletes as what they are, entertainers, and they don't see them as human beings. And I think it's okay now for a lot of guys to struggle mentally with it or be uncertain or unhappy. And you'd be surprised how many players at the NHL level don't genuinely don't enjoy the game. It's just all they know and all they're good at, and it pays them well. And so they keep doing it. And then once you get paid less and less, the incentive or like the dark cloud of I don't really enjoy this, but it's all I know, and I'm scared of what else can happen in my life if I don't do this or have an identity crisis or whatever. It's daunting. It's really daunting for a lot of guys.
Yeah, and I'm kind of lucky in that sense to where like again like last like my last like 2 years of juniors played for a horrible team. So like I knew I got traded to that team like halfway into my second year. So I like already kind of knew in the back of my head, all right, this is probably going to be it, and I
Mm-hmm.
need to pursue school. So like I didn't have like I missed the boys. Obviously, that's what everyone says. Like you miss the boys more than the game itself. And I
Oh
still
yeah.
play like beer league here in Houston, and like we have good guys. Like we had some guys who played in the coast in our league. We have guys who were like fighters in the dub. So it's like decent hockey. So you kind of still get that competitiveness. But as far as like having to completely change your life, I didn't have to really go through that or at the end of college because that's another thing like that post college depression, especially if you play hockey or if you're in a fraternity and you're around the same guys every single day, and then boom, like it's gone. So I was kind of lucky in that sense for hockey. Like ending juniors kind of sucked. Like missed the
Mm-hmm.
boys obviously coming out of college, not as bad because like I don't know,
Yeah.
but yeah, like you're saying that desk job. Like I work in the office side of construction, and like I thought luckily nobody at my company would ever see this, but like I thought that it was my dream job. And my first, like no joke, my first week, I was like, if I have to do this for the rest of my life, I won't make it. Like I can't. Like this is the worst thing ever.
And the thing is that's okay. And like
Yeah.
I was talking about this to someone the other day. So in PT school, I didn't everyone's vision of PT, especially on athlete side, is like orthopedics, working with injuries, athletes, and older individuals to an sense. But in PT, there's so many different disciplines. There's acute care, so people that are just in the hospital, you get burns, you have cardiorespiratory, you have oncology, you have pediatrics, you have all these things. And a lot of those, and we have to learn about them. And so right now, for the last year, I've been in my neurology. So we're talking like strokes, um, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, like different neurological disorders, as well as respiratory, bariatrics, all these things. And those are not my passion.
Mm.
And I've told like one of my teachers I was in class miserable, and she's like, how you doing? And I was like, I'll be honest, if I have to work in this acute care setting for the rest of my life, I'm going to leave the practice. I just don't like it. And yeah, I spent all this time, money, and effort, and I beat myself up every day, and I'm so stressed because I want to be this PT. But it's okay to not enjoy all the profession, like all the profession. It's okay. I want to do something that I want to do. I want to work with athletes. I want to work with high performing individuals, and I want to help them in the rehab sense. And I think that that's okay to acknowledge that some things aren't for everybody.
Mhm.
And just like you're saying that, your job at construction, your first day wasn't what you wanted it, and that's okay. But a lot of times people will say, well, you have a job, you should be thankful. Yes, you should, but it's
Yeah.
also okay to not be happy if you're not happy. And I think it's like so taboo for like an athletes to be like, oh, how could you, so selfish of you to not be happy? You're such a privilege. I'm like, yeah, but we're people too, man. And if your
Yeah.
brain is not operating the way you want it to with your situation, doesn't matter what you do. You could be living the dream job, Dan Bilzerian, whatever guys are into. If you're not happy with it, it's miserable. But on the outside looking in, everyone wishes they were you until they get there. And then they're like, hey, maybe this isn't for me. I get it. And so you don't get it until you get there. And I wish more people understood. So I hope more hockey players like talk about this kind of stuff. And the thing is, the ones on TV are usually the ones that are really successful.
Mhm.
And then so you only hear a lot of the good sides of it. And so that's why like I'm glad like to be on a podcast like this. Like I don't know how many people are going to listen and watch, but if like 4 or 5 people listen and actually take something out of it and kind of have a little bit of empathy for an athlete who maybe says, like who's that, Drouin on Montreal, took some time off because of mental health issues.
Mhm.
A lot of people gave him a hard time, but if you can have some empathy in terms of the amount of stress that he's under to perform every night, and it doesn't matter how much money you're making or how good you are, if your brain isn't where it needs to be, it's freaking miserable.
Yeah. No, yeah. That's like another thing is like, I mean, especially like that, like take like a professional athlete that's used to making so much money, like for him to find a way out or to even like subsidize his income at that point, like that's difficult. Like it's hard. Like I don't love what I do. I say like for me it's a rule of thirds. Like a third of the time I'm good, a third of the time I'm okay, and then the third of the day, like third of my days are bad. Regardless of what of those states I'm in, I'm good. Like I'm always good. I'm okay. I'm doing all right,
Mhm.
right? But I'm still trying to find a way out of it just because I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And but like you're saying, like for guys coming out, like I don't know. I just recommend everyone try a bunch of stuff. Try,
Yeah,
dive into like that's what I'm kind of doing now. I'm diving into anything that comes to mind that I'm like, this might be a business. I'm diving headfirst into it just because I
yeah,
want to have some options, get some experience, meet some cool people, So yeah, I feel like for guys coming out, like they talk about that. And I feel like it's for a lot of high, like you hear that for like guys that are in special ops for the military, like especially for like the boys, like if you're in a professional environment where you're with the boys every day, used to performing at a high level, and then you kind of have to get plucked from that, it's a difficult transition for most
mhm.
people. It doesn't really matter what it is. Like it seems pretty common.
It is. And like for me, I was so burnt out of hockey when I retired. I told myself I was not coaching. I was maybe going to help out a couple buddies if they ever needed it. But that's why I went back to school to be a PT so I could be completely removed from hockey. Then just because I had some time to decompress and I have a great group of goalies and had a great group of goalies for like my time at Tech, I started to get the spark again. And then because of that, and because of a lot of the misinformation I see on social media in terms of goalies and their training and stuff, I decided, okay, like maybe I could use miseducation experience I have for good. And then I found the love of it. But I didn't know what to do when I retired. I was in school, I was getting my master's, but looking at it now, it just feels like I was just walking around like in a daze because it was just so different. And I just didn't, I went from your day's done at one to now I'm studying 8 hours every single day. And it just is like that. And it's very difficult for some people. And it was difficult for me. And only until probably the last year or so did I start to understand and figure out my life a little bit and get more of a picture on what I wanted to be and how I could set up my life instead of just kind of going with the flow of it, taking a PT job in some clinic, raising a family, doing the thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just
Yeah.
for me, that's not what would make me happy.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. Like I guess it doesn't matter what you do. Like if you have something, I guess, in mind that you want to do, the end goal is so daunting. So I guess whenever I talk to people that are like, "Oh, I want to start my own business," I always tell them, I'm like, just focus on the like first step at like one step at a time. Don't be focusing like if you're trying to start a goalie camp and you want to have the most successful goalie camp in the country. It's like if you focus on that end goal all the time, it's going to be a more stressful experience. Sometimes it's better just to look at that first step ahead of you and just kind of keep that going. And eventually, at least that's what I've noticed. Like, focus on one thing at a time. Whatever's the next step that you need to do to get kind of towards your goal is all you really need to be focusing on.
I
Um,
agree. And like, being someone who owns a business, I was not a business savvy person. Actually, the first couple of years of my business, it did not do well. I had to hire a business coach to help, and that made immense difference. Um, but like you said, so many people will say either I want to start coaching or I want to do this. First thing is you just have to start, and
mhm.
it's never going to be perfect, and you cannot have paralysis by analysis because I did and I do a lot of times.
Yeah.
And yes, I have my massive dream that I want to set up. I want my own clinic. I want my own gym in the clinic that I work at for a few hours, and I want to coach in the rest of the time after that. That's my goal. But if everything I do is working towards it, it's good, but I can't get obsessed with that. And I need to focus on the small things, like you had said, where I need to, one, still be a student. One, I need to be a good boyfriend to my girlfriend. I need to be a good son to my family and my friends. And I can't get obsessed with it. And then I also need to develop the goalies I have now. I can't take them for granted just because they're 15 years old or 14 years old because I want to work in the NHL or whatever it is. I focus on each of these goalies because that's how I hone my craft. And they're the ones that when I get there they're going to be 20, 21, 22, 23 going pro. And I will have that resume, that body of work and that experience. And that's important because you'll see a lot of goalie coaches. I work with like beer league goalies in my elite goalie method program. I have my younger guys and then I have my beer leaguers because not a lot of people want to coach beer leaguers
Mhm.
because they're not going to go play pro. And I do, for me, I disagree. I will coach anyone who wants to be coached because I just want people to get better. And so if my mindset was I just want to coach the best goalies, well, I'm going to have maybe one goalie on my roster that I coach, if that. But no, when I choose goalies who I let join my program, I base it on a character standpoint. I want good people that are going to work hard, be receptive, reach out when they have problems, and then go from there. And that's because I can take an average goalie and make him a little better to some degree, whether that's stronger, better positioning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can't take a bad kid and make him a better kid. And so
Yeah.
it's the same thing as like you can't just automatically just jump to the NHL or jump to all these things. You have to take it day by day by day. And it sometimes sucks. Sometimes I
Yeah.
just want to be in the clinic. I want to have it done, but I can't. I have to finish school. I have to set up the business. I have to make some money to get the loan and all these things. And so I can't
Mhm.
think about it too much. I have to understand what I need to do, but then what do I need to do today is the ultimate question.
Exactly. So I guess to get into that, you finished playing pro and you started your Phillips Sports Performance, which is a company focused on training and nutrition, specializing in goaltending. Um, did you know you wanted to start this company? Or when did you decide you wanted to start this company? Well, I guess we kind of touched on that while you're, I guess, wrapping up playing. You know, you wanted to get into it. What What do you see young goaltenders struggling with the most? I don't know if that's kind of too broad of a question, but is there like one thing that you see most guys need to work on right now?
So I started my last year of pro when I was in England. It started off as nutrition coaching. It had a few different, I went through like a bunch of different rebrands. Started off as nutrition for athletes, and then I started nutrition and training for athletes. And then I settled in Phillips Sports Performance. And only in the past year did I really start to emphasize the goaltending part. And so that's how it started. And only in the last year as it started to like really pop off because I got better. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned and I continue to make mistakes. I continue to learn and kind of develop the program I want to develop. And it's getting a lot of results. And it's making a lot of goalies really better. Um, in terms of the biggest thing that I see that mistakes goalies make is I think a lot of it does come down to that analysis by paralysis, kind of combined with just so much like information out there that's both good and bad, where kids have no idea. And I know I start to sound like the old guy when I say this, but that instant gratification culture we live in, people expect I post about all the time, but people expect the 3 hacks that are going to make you a pro, or just do this one tip to change your game. It's
Yeah.
it's never like that. But I get every single day tens and tens of messages saying, what do I need to do to stand out at tryouts? How do I fix my glove? What's the 2 things you could say to make me a better goalie? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, and it's sometimes, and like I do Instagram lives every Saturday. And when I watch them back, I think, am I a sarcastic asshole? And I go, well, probably, but a lot of the answers I give are the truthful answers that come off as sarcastic. Like a question of the day was, how do I stand out in tryouts? You have to be better. You have
Yeah.
to be better than everyone. There's nothing else I can say, or it's like, how do I'm getting beat to my glove. And my answer is usually, okay, there's about 100 things it could be for that reason. And I don't
Yeah.
know what that is. So it's everyone thinks that their solutions are these simple things. And not saying that is everyone, but it's just a lot of kids just need to do the basics very well for a long time and find a coach and work with that coach consistently for a long time. And they'll be much better off than going on Instagram and trying to do this exercise or that exercise or this exercise because it's the 3 exercises you need to be a better goalie. And those things don't exist. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that and detest that kind of clickbait
Yeah.
stuff. And sometimes I use it. I have to be honest, sometimes I use it, but
Right.
I do try my best to have disclaimers where there's no 3 best things you're going to need. And so when I do clickbait my titles, I try to toe the line between too much and like superlative and realism, really.
Yeah, I agree. Like I this is my third interview I've done, and I'll post shorts, and it's like it needs to be a little bit clickbaity, but you can't. Like I'm not trying to be ridiculous with it. And I asked the same question to Jason Mazzotti, and I said, "What's that first? Like, what are you looking for if you go to watch a goalie for the first time? What are you looking for? What makes a goaltender stand out?" And his answer to that was if they look like they've been there before, like if they're
That's a good
comfortable,
answer.
if they have if the kid looks confident, right? He doesn't look like he's nervous. He handles
Mhm.
the moment well. He was like, that's what I'm looking for because if they can do it in this setting, then they can probably do it at the next level.
Yeah,
And I
that's a
was
good
like,
answer. Like if you just look like a goalie, okay, good. Check one. Now we can
yeah,
get in the details, and you'll be surprised. And when you're younger and you're a kid and you're developing, you shouldn't. Some kids are going to look better than others, and so that's why you can't just base everything off of a practice or whatever. But it's a good first step, and then from there, now we can get into more details and more details. How are they as a kid? How are they as a student? How was their skating? How was their tracking? How was blah 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 blah? We get super detailed, but just to have the first thing that a scout sees or a coach sees is, do they look like they've been there? And that's a real. I'm going to definitely use that because that is a good
it
answer.
was that. And when I asked him was what he thought was the most important thing was goalie sense, which I didn't think about that. So I guess the answer to the young goaltenders listening is like the two things is kind of two things you can't really coach, which might not be what most people want to hear. I mean, I guess you can coach confidence and coach to carry yourself well, but I guess just the understanding where the puck's going to be and where it's coming from is a little more difficult than
And
getting
that's
into goalies' heads.
just goalie sense is just experience.
Mm,
And experience combined with a little sprinkle of good coaching, because it is hard. It's hard to teach reading the play. You can explain how things work, but ultimately it's up to the goalie to put the pieces together. In terms of looking like a goalie, that has a little bit more of the coach's influence because it depends on what weaknesses are you targeting, what emphasis are you targeting from a young age. The skating, are they skating properly? All these things. But and it's so hard to measure goalie sense. That's why it all comes down to, do they look like a goalie? because it's both. If they're in position and making difficult saves look easy, or they're just a half step ahead, then you can kind of get like this guy or girl gets it. Like, okay, they get it. And but if they're always behind, if they're making improper reads, and consistently making those poor reads, then you could be like, they're not just there yet. But it's a big experience. Experience plays a massive role in that. And again, it's not something that you just wake up and you train it. You
Yeah.
have to go and play a lot of games and watch NHL games and understand and explain it and all these things. And it's so multifactorial.
That's another thing that Jason touched on. Is I was asking him like, he was explaining to me like how many repetitions you need as a goaltender. Like even when it comes to games, like as a backup goalie, like I was talking to him, he was saying how like as a backup goalie, if you want to play in like 10 games a season, to be able to come in and play well, like you need to be in the flow of the game. And that really made me realize it because even when I was playing and I'd be like fourth line and I'd get 3 shifts a game, if you're sitting for 10 minutes and you got to go jump on the ice, like that's difficult. So I can't imagine what that's like from the other end as far as being a goaltender and having to not play a game for however many weeks and then jump in and have to make the most of that opportunity.
It's hard. And
Yeah.
that being a backup is a skill in itself. And that's a whole other topic for another podcast. But yeah, it's so many things. It's not black and white. There are a few things in goaltending that are black and white, and those are the basics. And then after that, there's a lot of different ways. And there's a reason why no two goalies in NHL truly look the same, because there's a lot of different ways to stop the puck. So everyone needs to stop focusing on how do I look like Vasilevsky or Shesterkin, and just how are you going to stop the puck? I think that's the most important thing for a lot of goalies too.
Yeah. That and the angle change I asked him about. Like how can goalies combat people like Austin Matthews and Cole Caulfield, which I still can't figure out how to do that angle change shot effectively. I can't do it. But I was like, how can these goalies stop it? Same thing, repetition. You just gotta over and over and over and get used to seeing those shots be coming off at different angles. So
No, that's exactly it. So the goalies that are former Leaf goalies will have a little bit of advantage when they get traded and play against them, because your brain is just pattern mapped a lot of Austin Matthews shots, so you have some idea. But that's why, and then that's why if someone changes the angle of their blade slightly, they score. And that's the difference between NHL and like younger kids, where like NHL goalies don't really get beat clean that much. It's usually there's some sort of visual distraction or deception on behalf of the player that allows them to beat the goalie, because goalies are so good. They've had so many repetitions, they get it. Players need to change something in order to throw the goalie off, in a sense.
did you have more time or do you have some other interviews to get
I
to?
about 5 minutes, and then I gotta pop off.
Okay, I'll
I
ask one
gotta
more
I
question
gotta
for
gotta
you.
go study. I have 2 exams this week.
Oh, I'm so glad to be out of school. I hate school.
Can't wait. Can't wait till we're
um,
done. We're done.
so there might not be an answer to this one, but skating, I feel like I mean, hockey sense obviously, but for forward or defenseman, especially in the NHL now, you have to be able to skate, right?
Mhm.
I think most players, if you could take one skill from any player, I think almost everyone would say, I want to be able to skate like McDavid. Is there a goalie equivalent or one specific skill that is that important?
Skating.
Really? See, that's what
Skating.
Jason said. I was confused. I didn't know. I
So
had no idea.
I would say goalie skating is the thing. So your ability to skate determines your ability to be in the proper position. So if you are not a good skater, you are probably not going to be in the best position at all times. And then so things like tracking, rebound control, reaction time, all those things don't matter because you're just not in position. So priority number one is to get on angle and be square, and your ability to skate determines that. So skating number one. Once a goalie is a good skater, you don't have to be great. Great is better, but a good skater, then you can start to focus on the other things. But so many goalies are poor skaters because they think it's just like, oh, my tracking or oh, my rebound control. And a lot of those things are just a symptom of being a bad skater. And I was an average skater. I was an average pro level skater. So I get it. Like there probably was a ceiling on my career because of my skating ability. and it was something I worked on, and I got a little better, but not like insanely better at it. Skating, skating. Most important thing, skating. And the thing is kids and everyone like, just naturally as a goalie, you just want to take shots. You don't want to go out and skate. Just like a player doesn't want to go to power skating every day. They want to shoot and score goals. Goalies need to skate. So when I work with my younger goalies, like goalies that are under the age of like 13, 14, we skate. We do skating drills, or anytime that there's a shot, there is a lot of skating movements leading up to it because in my brain, I want about 75% of their practice to be skating, 25% to be stopping the puck.
Is there an NHL goalie that is significantly better at skating, would you say?
Any of the Russians, Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, Shirokin, are very good skaters, and UC Saros. You actually, I guess I couldn't. There's no particular order, but
Mhm.
those four goalies are hands down the best. But you take a guy like Robin Leonard, who's not in a good, well, I guess he is a good skater, but he doesn't look like a good skater, still an NHL starter. So it's not, skating is that foundation. And once you get to the prerequisite where it is NHL level, there's a big variance in terms of how good NHL guys are. Excuse me. But once you get to the NHL level, that is the important step where you now have the skating ability to play at the NHL. Now, what else can you do? It's that kind of development model.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for hopping on with me today. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.